It started like any other Thursday night. I was halfway through cooking dinner when she came downstairs in that black wrap dress, the one that walks the line between elegant and dangerous. Her heels clicked like punctuation against the hardwood, commanding attention without asking for it. Her hair, still damp at the ends from the shower, smelled faintly of sandalwood and something citrusy. I couldn't decide if she was going out on a date or preparing for war. "Girls' night," she said casually. "Just me and Lacey." She said it like she'd mentioned it already. She hadn't. I would have remembered. I stirred the pasta a little more aggressively than needed and gave her a slow once-over. "With Lacey?" I asked. My voice cracked slightly. It always did when I was trying too hard to sound indifferent. She turned around, earrings dangling, checking her ass in the mirror by the front door. "Yes, we're grabbing drinks. I told you we might." "You didn't." My tone was flat. I didn't say it to start an argument, just to keep her honest. She paused, lips pressing together like she was calculating whether it was worth engaging. In the end, she just shrugged. "Well," she said, coming over and kissing me lightly on the cheek, "you know how it is now. We're open, remember?" There was a tight smile on her lips, but her eyes flickered away from mine, like she couldn't hold the gaze. I tried to act cool, like this was fine, like we'd discussed this 100 times, and I wasn't still choking on the idea every time I heard it aloud. "Right? Open." The word tasted metallic. Like blood. She pulled her phone from her clutch and started typing a message, thumb gliding across the screen like she was writing something far more exciting than "just on my way." I leaned back against the counter and watched her. I couldn't stop myself from noticing the curve of her spine under the dress or the smooth skin behind her knees. My mind was already jumping forward, trying to imagine what the night would really look like for her. Where she'd go, who she'd be with, what she'd be doing, who she'd be doing. I tried to steady my breathing. I told myself, this is freedom. This is the new normal. She gets to explore. I get to explore. No strings, no secrets. Just two people navigating life honestly. But if that were true, why did it feel like she was walking out of my life a little more with every step she took? The doorbell rang. Lacey. I didn't even need to see her. I knew the sound of her knock now. It used to make me smile. Now it did something else, somewhere between dread and arousal, a complicated tightening in my chest that I couldn't fully unpack. They exchanged greetings, laughter, and a shared secret I wasn't invited to. I stood there, uselessly holding a wooden spoon, like some sitcom husband playing the background role in his own life. She didn't introduce me again. Lacey gave me a quick nod, her lips curled in a polite half-smile that lasted all of 2 seconds. "Don't wait up," my wife said as she walked out. The kind of line that should sound playful, except this time it wasn't a joke. She really meant it. Then came the final ritual, the goodbye kiss. Soft, quick, dutiful, a placeholder for real affection. And then she was gone. I followed them to the window, careful not to be seen, and watched them walk to Lacey's car. The street lamp lit them up just enough for me to make out the way their arms brushed as they walked, the slight lean in that might have meant something, or maybe nothing. My wife tossed her head back laughing at something Lacey said. And just like that, the passenger door opened, she slid in, and they were backing out of the driveway. Gone. And the silence that followed was brutal. It wasn't just the absence of voices or the hum of heels on tile. It was the way the walls seemed to widen around me, the way the rooms felt bigger and colder, the way every creak of the floor felt like a reminder that I was here, and she wasn't. I went back to the kitchen, but the pasta had already turned soft, overcooked. I dumped it into the sink, watched the steam rise up, ghostly and slow. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat on the couch, scrolling through my phone without looking at anything, waiting for some kind of distraction to fill the vacuum. But nothing filled it. Everything in the house was still marked by her. Her coffee mug on the shelf, her perfume still lingering in the hallway, the folded blanket she always used haphazardly on the couch. It was all there, like she hadn't really left, like she might walk back in at any moment and say, "Just kidding." It was all a test. Of course, I'm not sleeping with someone else. But she wasn't coming back. Not tonight. Maybe not ever, in the way I remembered her. I walked into the bedroom. Her side of the bed was already cooler than mine. I lay down, not because I was tired, but because it felt like there was nothing else to do. The ceiling looked different in the dark. It felt like it was closing in. I could still smell her shampoo on the pillow beside me. And still, I told myself, This is what we agreed to. This is freedom. But it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like abandonment. And outside, the car that took her away was already long gone. The sound of the front door locking behind her echoed in my chest louder than it did in the hallway. The click felt final, like a seal on something I hadn't agreed to, even if technically I had. I sat on the couch longer than I meant to. The beer bottle sweated onto the coaster, untouched. I told myself to watch something, anything. Noise helps, keeps the thoughts out. But the remote sat on the coffee table like it didn't belong to me. Everything in the house felt foreign tonight, like I was squatting in a version of my life I didn't recognize. I finally picked it up and started flipping channels. News. Some sports recap. A rerun of a sitcom we used to laugh at together, but now I couldn't stand. The canned laughter hit too hard, too fake. I muted the TV. The silence wasn't better. I wandered into the kitchen and opened the fridge again, not because I was hungry, but because it was something to do. Inside, a half-eaten slice of cheesecake, leftover tie in a white carton, oat milk neither of us really liked, but kept buying. I shut the door. Stood there. Shut it again harder, like that would help. I ended up in our bedroom. Our bedroom. That word tasted bitter now. The bed was too neatly made. The kind of neat that comes from guilt or control. Hers, not mine. I never tucked the corners. She liked things tight, neat, precise. Even now, with her gone, her side was folded perfectly, her pillow fluffed like she was still trying to impress someone. I picked up her pillow and pressed my face into it. Her scent hit me like a memory I didn't ask for. That warm floral note, light but distinct, mixed with the smell of her skin. Familiar, anchoring, maddening. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the closet. It was slightly ajar. Not wide open, just enough to suggest someone had rushed out. A sleeve of her blouse hung out, like it hadn't been hung properly. She always rushed on nights like this. Confident on the outside, but jittery in the ways only I noticed. She bit her lip when she was nervous. Tapped her thigh with her nails. Tonight, she was biting hard. I pushed the closet open, just enough to peek in. Her heels were still lined up on the left, purses stacked on the shelf. One was missing, the small black one with the gold chain. It was always her go-to when she dressed to impress. I sat down on the floor of the bedroom, back against the wall. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't jealous. Not really. I was haunted. Not by what she was doing, but by the hollow left behind. The absence. The idea of her being alive somewhere without me in the scene, laughing, drinking, maybe already pressed up against someone else at the bar. That thought snuck in like a thief, sharp and precise. Is she with someone already? No, I told myself. It's too soon. They probably just got there. They're at the bar, talking. Maybe dancing. Maybe. I stood up. Too much. I walked down the hallway, checking rooms like I didn't already know what was in them. The guest room was still stacked with unfolded laundry, hers. A half-finished painting leaned against the wall from when she swore she'd take up acrylics again. A book with a bookmark halfway through lay on the nightstand. She hadn't touched it in weeks. Everything unfinished. Everything hers. I moved to my office. Turned the computer on. Sat down and tried to check emails. Made it 3 messages in before I closed it again. The worst part was the questions I couldn't ask. Not out loud. Not even to myself. What if she's with someone better? Smarter. Funnier. More exciting. More new. I hate how powerful the word new has become. We used to be new. I checked my phone. Nothing. Of course not. She never texted me during nights like this. It was part of the rules. No interference. No guilt. The arrangement was supposed to be clean, adult, respectful. But it didn't feel like any of those things. I pulled up an old photo instead. One I hadn't looked at in months. Us at the lake, 2 summers ago. She was wet from the water, laughing, wearing that red bikini I always liked. Her hair was wild and tangled, cheeks flushed from the sun. She looked happy. I don't know if I looked happy. I zoomed in on my own face, trying to read something there. Something I'd missed. Was that the moment I started to lose her? I closed the photo. Threw the phone on the bed. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. I walked back through the house again. Aimless. Tired, but not. Restless in a way I couldn't fix. I finally settled on the couch again, hoping sleep would just take me without asking permission. That's when it happened. The screen lit up. A message. Not from her. From Lacey. I stared at it, blinking. Hey, just checking in. You okay? Not her. Lacey. I opened it, heart thudding. Her words were simple. Kind. Too kind. There was something in the phrasing that didn't sit like casual friendship. I stared at it longer than I should have. Typing. Then not. She stopped herself. Another buzz. It's pretty loud here. Just wanted to say hi. I read it again. Then again. Why was she texting me? Why now? I hesitated. Typed back. I'm fine. Just a quiet night. Send. Not a second later. Yeah, I figured. She's having fun. What the hell did that mean? I sat upright, staring at the words like they might rearrange themselves into something more innocent. But they didn't. The room felt smaller suddenly. Warmer. My skin prickled. Then came the last message, for now. We didn't really talk about what this all means. Did we? I stared at my phone like it had betrayed me. The message sat there, glowing softly in the dim light of the living room, waiting for something. An answer, a confession, permission. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, muscles tight, pulse loud in my ears. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, the ticking of the clock on the wall. The house felt alert now, like it was listening. We didn't really talk about what this all means. Did we? I read it again, slower this time. I should have shut it down. I knew that. A clean answer. Something neutral. Something respectful. That was the responsible move. But responsibility felt like a language I'd forgotten how to speak tonight. I typed, erased, typed again. What do you mean? I finally sent. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Typing. Stopped. Typing again. I imagined her at the bar, phone angled low, face lit by the screen. I could picture the crease between her brows when she thought too hard, the way she bit the inside of her cheek when she was nervous. I hated that I knew those details. Hated that my body reacted to the image anyway. Just making sure you're okay, she replied. This is new. For all of us. New. That word again. I leaned back into the couch cushions, letting my head fall against the backrest. My chest felt tight, like I'd been holding my breath without realizing it. I'm managing, I typed. House feels emptier than I expected. That was more honest than I'd planned. The dots came back almost instantly. I get that, she wrote. Bars are loud. She's distracted. Everyone is. Everyone. I imagine my wife laughing too hard at something, leaning closer than necessary to be heard over the music. I imagine hands brushing, maybe lingering. My stomach twisted, but there was something else layered underneath it now. Something warm, something curious. You sound like you're not having much fun, I replied. A pause this time. Longer. Then, I didn't say that. I smirked despite myself. What are you doing right now? She asked. The question felt heavier than it should have. Sitting on the couch. Overthinking, I answered. She sent a laughing emoji. 1. Not playful. Not flirty. Safe. I'm by the back patio, she said. Needed air. That image landed harder than I expected. The idea of her stepping away from the noise, choosing quiet instead. Choosing distance. Choosing, in some small way, separation. Why? I asked. Another pause. Because watching her flirt with strangers feels different when you're not drunk. There it was. I sat up straighter. That doesn't bother you? I typed. It's not my place, she replied. At least, that's what I keep telling myself. I swallowed. The conversation had shifted without either of us acknowledging it. This wasn't small talk anymore. This was something else. 2 people circling a truth neither wanted to touch directly. I didn't think it would feel like this, I admitted. I thought I'd feel relieved. Instead, I just feel left. There was no immediate reply. 10 seconds passed. 20. I wondered if I'd said too much. If she'd put her phone away, decided she'd crossed a line. Part of me hoped she had. A louder part hoped she hadn't. Then the screen lit again. You're not invisible, she wrote. Not to me. My breath caught. I stared at that sentence longer than any message had a right to be stared at. It felt intimate in a way that had nothing to do with sex and everything to do with being seen. I didn't mean to make this weird, she added quickly. I just care about you. Care. Another dangerous word. Why? I asked before I could stop myself. This time the dots stayed longer. I imagined her leaning against a brick wall outside the bar, cigarette smoke curling around people she didn't know, her jacket pulled tighter around her waist. Because I've known you a long time, she finally replied. And because you deserve better than pretending this doesn't hurt. My phone buzzed again before I could respond. I think I'm heading home early. I stared at the words, heart suddenly racing. Oh, I typed. Everything okay? Yeah, she said. I just don't feel right staying. I pictured her leaving. walking to her car alone, the quiet replacing the noise the way it had for me earlier. The thought sent a pulse of something sharp and electric through my chest. Drive safe, I typed, choosing restraint over impulse. She didn't reply right away. Then, you too. Try to sleep. A beat. Then one last message. We should talk more. Soon. The screen went dark. I set the phone down slowly, like it might shatter if I moved too fast. The house felt different now. Not empty. Charged. I wasn't alone anymore. Not really. And that realization scared me more than the silence ever had. The house was silent again. But not the same kind of silence that had settled after my wife left. That silence had weight. Absence. Like everything good had been vacuumed out of the walls. This one felt like holding your breath after something brushes past you in the dark. I couldn't stop replaying her last text. We should talk more. Soon. It echoed, circled, carved out a space in me I didn't know was waiting. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like an hour, the television muted, its pale light dancing across the walls. My phone sat on the armrest like a loaded gun, just one more buzz away from firing off a different version of my night. But it didn't buzz again. She was gone, driving home, alone, or so I told myself. I started to imagine what her place looked like. I'd been there only twice, once for a birthday, once for drinks after helping my wife set up a surprise party. I remembered dim lamps and a candle that smelled like whiskey and cedar. I remembered the curve of her couch, the way she kicked her heels off as soon as she walked through the door. I remembered her. Too well. I stood up to pour another drink. Something light, just enough to dull the edge, nothing more. But halfway to the kitchen, I heard it. A knock. 3 quick, soft raps. It wasn't loud. Not urgent. But it stopped me mid-step. I froze. The knock came again. The kind that says, I'm not here to be dramatic. I'm just here. I stepped cautiously to the door, not bothering to hide my confusion. My heart thumped with a strange mix of nerves and something else. Anticipation? Hope? No, surely not. I pulled open the door. It was her. Lacey. Still wearing the same leather jacket and jeans she must have left in, coat half on, one boot unzipped. Her hair was windblown and messy in that accidental, sexy way, like she'd pulled it into a bun in the car and thought better of it halfway through. Her eyes met mine immediately. No pretense. No polite smile. Just open, raw, searching. I didn't feel right staying out, she said quietly. I opened the door wider without thinking. She stepped inside. The door closed behind her with a soft click that felt louder than any slam. She lingered in the entryway, unsure. She rubbed her palms together, like she was trying to warm herself, or maybe work up the courage to speak. Is this weird? She asked, voice low. Yes, I said, but it doesn't feel wrong. She smiled at that, just barely. The air between us was thick with questions we weren't ready to ask. Questions we'd been circling for months, maybe longer. She toed off her boots and glanced around like she was seeing my house for the first time, even though she'd been here countless times before, for dinners, birthdays, movie nights. But not like this. Never like this. Want something to drink? I asked, already heading toward the kitchen. Sure, she said. Whatever you're having. I poured 2 whiskeys, neat. Came back and handed her a glass. Our fingers brushed and didn't immediately part. She followed me into the living room, and we sat, first on opposite sides of the couch, like we were guests in each other's lives. The space between us was thick with silence. Not awkward. Not tense. Just charged. We sipped our drinks. She spoke first. I didn't think it would feel this strange, watching her with someone else. I turned my head slowly to look at her. She wasn't subtle tonight, she added, eyes focused on the rim of her glass. I said nothing. She laughed once dry. You're a better person than I am. Doubt it, I said. She looked at me then. Really looked. Not the casual glance of a friend. The kind of look that lingers, heavy, with meaning. She left you alone. Again, Lacey said. I don't know how you keep pretending that's normal. I don't think I do anymore. We sat in that confession like it had changed the temperature in the room. She leaned back into the cushions, head tilted, letting the whiskey burn trail down her throat. She doesn't even see it, Lacey said. How she's rewriting the rules to benefit herself. How she calls it open, but means herself. Not you. You sound angry. I am, she said. But not just at her. She didn't explain what that meant, and I didn't ask. Because I already knew. I shifted closer. Just a little. Inches. She didn't move away. In the quiet that followed, I realized something. This wasn't about sex. Not yet. It was about something else. Longing. Confusion. Wanting to feel chosen again. Wanted. Needed. Her fingers grazed the rim of her glass as she stared down into it. I didn't come here to cause problems, she said softly. I just didn't want to be alone. You're not, I said. She turned toward me then, so close I could see the faint freckles on her cheeks beneath her makeup. Her eyes flicked to my lips for half a second, barely long enough to register, but I saw it. Felt it. Neither of us moved. Neither of us dared to. Not yet. Not tonight. She pulled her knees up onto the couch, curling into the space, her body finally relaxing. She looked smaller that way, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. I don't think this is just about her, she said after a long pause. I turned to face her fully, our knees touching now. Me neither. The couch was too small, not in size, but in the way space felt between us, compressed, thick, intentional. Lacey had curled up beside me like it was her place, like she'd always belonged in that little corner where she now sat, legs folded under her, fingers idly tracing the rim of her glass. She hadn't touched me. I hadn't touched her, but we were both acutely aware of the inches, barely there, that separated our knees. The air was heavy, charged. If silence could sweat, it would have soaked the walls. She looked over at me. You ever think maybe this wasn't supposed to go this way? I blinked slowly. You mean the marriage? She shook her head, lips curling up slightly. No, I mean tonight. I let that settle. The drink sat untouched in my hand now. I wasn't even sure if I was breathing. It's strange, she continued, being here with you like this. And not just because of her. Then why? She looked away for a moment, then back again, more serious now. Because I've thought about this before. I didn't move, didn't even flinch. But inside, something lurched. Something old and buried. Something I'd denied, even to myself. When? I asked. She let out a breath. A few times. Dinner parties. Game nights. That one New Year's when she passed out before midnight, and we were the only ones still up. I remembered that night. Champagne. Confetti still stuck in her hair. Her head on my shoulder, just for a moment, before she pulled away and laughed it off. I didn't know, I said. Bullshit, she replied. Not unkindly. You knew. You just never looked directly at it. We fell quiet again. Outside, a car passed slowly, headlights casting long, shifting shadows across the room. I watched them crawl across her face, the soft gold of the streetlight catching the edge of her cheekbone, the glint in her eyes. I thought it was just me, I admitted. Feeling that way. It wasn't, she said. But you were married, and I was her friend, so I stayed in my lane. She took another sip of her drink, this time slower. Thoughtful. And now? I asked. She glanced down at her lap. Now I don't know where the lanes are anymore. I wanted to laugh, or cry, or maybe both. Because it was true. The roadmap we'd all agreed to, the one with clear boundaries, clean rules, safe zones, had been rewritten without consent. My wife had drawn a new version, and Lacey and I had been left driving blind in the fog. She shifted, stretching one leg out toward me, her knee bumping mine softly. You're allowed to want things, you know, she said. Even now. What do I want? I asked quietly, more to myself than her. Her eyes held mine. Maybe the same thing I do. We didn't move. Didn't kiss. Didn't touch beyond the occasional brush of knees and elbows and glances. But the tension was there. Sharp. Palpable. Like a wire pulled too tight, humming between us. It's not even about sex, she said. Not really. No, I agreed. It's about being seen. She gave me a sad smile. And maybe finally being chosen. I swallowed hard. I used to think she was everything, I said. Smart. Beautiful. Independent. The kind of woman people admire. She is, Lacey said. But she doesn't know how to love you. I looked at her, surprised. She shrugged. She knows how to love herself. And that's okay. But it's different. She thinks this open thing, is a gift. Lacey scoffed. It's freedom with conditions. You get silence. She gets adventure. There was no bitterness in her tone. Just clarity. We sat with that. Unsaid truths piled between us like smoke. Then her phone buzzed. We both looked at it. She didn't move to check it right away. Just stared at the screen, lighting up her jacket pocket. It's her, she said, finally pulling it out. I didn't ask how she knew. She read the message quickly, lips tightening. Then she turned the screen toward me. It was a photo. My wife at the bar, grinning, holding up a cocktail, her arm looped around someone I didn't recognize, a man. His hand was low on her waist. Too low. Under it. Wish you were here. I felt heat rise to my face. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Just numbness. She's drunk, Lacey said, voice dull. Yeah. She's trying to make a point. She succeeded. Lacey set the phone face down on the table. She doesn't see the lines anymore, she murmured. Maybe she never did. We both leaned back, exhausted by the weight of it all. You okay? She asked. No, I said. But I will be. She looked at me carefully. Not like I was fragile, but like I was real. And I don't know the last time someone looked at me like that. You're not the one breaking vows tonight, she said. But I'm thinking about it. She nodded. Me too. Her hand was close to mine now. Too close. If I moved a single inch, we'd be touching. But we didn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because crossing that line wasn't about lust. It was about what came after. What we couldn't undo. What we couldn't pretend wasn't real. I should go, she said, but she didn't move. The room went still again. We breathed each other in and waited for something neither of us could name. Lacey didn't leave. Not immediately. She said she should, but she stayed curled on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, her empty glass cradled between both hands like it might protect her from something. Maybe guilt. Maybe want. The lamp above us cast her in warm gold, and for a second I imagined this wasn't strange. That she belonged here like this. With me. My phone buzzed. So did hers. We both flinched like we'd been caught doing something worse than talking. I reached for mine. My wife. The message preview was simple. Miss you, face blowing a kiss. A beat later, another came in. Hope you're making good use of your freedom tonight, winking face. I didn't smile. Not even close. I looked over. Lacey's phone was still face down, but she could tell from my expression it was her too. She reached for it, thumb hovering over the screen. Then she sighed. She's 3 drinks in and playing games, she said without even opening it. She thinks this is a game, I muttered, holding the phone like it was about to burn through my palm. Lacey leaned forward, setting her empty glass down gently on the coffee table. She looked tired now, bone-deep tired. Not from the night. From everything that led up to it. She always did like writing the rules, she said. I nodded slowly. Rules we weren't allowed to question. She made them sound noble, Lacey added, sarcasm curling around her voice. Open meant evolved, right? Progressive. Brave. Until it stopped being sexy and started being lonely. I didn't mean to say that out loud. But I did. And I didn't regret it. She turned toward me, knees brushing mine again, not by accident this time. She doesn't get it, she said. This isn't balance. This is her redefining monogamy, so she doesn't have to feel guilty for outgrowing it. Is that what this is? I asked. She outgrew me? I don't know, she said softly. But she certainly stopped choosing you. Those words hit harder than I expected. Because they were true. My wife still texted. Still smiled across the dinner table. Still touched my shoulder as she passed behind me. But none of it felt like choosing. It felt like routine. Like default. Like comfort, not love. Lacey lifted her phone and scrolled. I could see the glow reflecting in her eyes. She just posted a photo, she murmured. You should see this. I leaned in. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to know. The photo was worse than the last. My wife. Same bar. New man. He had his arm around her neck now, not just her waist. Her lips were close to his ear, whispering something with a playful smirk I hadn't seen in weeks. Maybe longer. The caption read, Trust is freedom, Blackheart, #open marriage, #no regrets. I pulled back, ball rising in my throat. She's not even trying to be discreet. She doesn't think she has to be, Lacey said. Because you agreed. Did I? I asked. Did I really? She went quiet. So did I? I thought back to the night my wife first brought up the idea. It had been framed like a question, but it was a proposition dressed up to look polite. Just think about it, she'd said. It's not cheating if we're both honest. I remembered the way she'd said honest, like it was some magical cure for desire. Like acknowledging your need to fuck other people made it noble. Safe. I remembered nodding. And I remembered the hollow feeling in my chest when she smiled like I'd passed a test. Lacey shifted beside me. You know what I think, she said, voice low. What? She thought I'd be the problem. The temptation. That if she opened the gate, you'd go after me. That she could play the martyr and blame you for what came next. I turned to her slowly. She's mentioned you before, I admitted. More than once. She laughed bitterly. Of course she has. You think she wanted this to happen? No. I think she feared it. But she also made it inevitable. I let that sink in. I was gripping my glass too tightly, but I didn't loosen my hold. Lacey looked down at her hands. I spent a lot of time telling myself I was loyal, that I respected the boundaries. But now I wonder if all I was doing was waiting. For what? For her to push you away hard enough that I didn't have to feel guilty anymore. I couldn't respond to that. Not with words. I reached forward and touched her hand. Gently. Nothing more. Her fingers twitched like she might pull away, but she didn't. We sat like that, barely touching, but it was the most intimate thing I'd felt in months. No expectation. No performance. Just presence. She doesn't know what she's losing, Lacey whispered. Maybe she never really saw it to begin with, I said. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my wife. You okay, babe? Hope you're not too lonely, smiling face with horns. I didn't answer. I turned the phone face down and looked at the woman beside me. She met my gaze. Something had shifted. We both knew it. This wasn't confusion anymore. It was clarity. We didn't rush. That surprised me. I had expected something, anything, to break after that last message from my wife. A slam of emotion, a kiss we couldn't take back, maybe a blur of limbs and guilt and adrenaline. But instead, everything slowed. The space between Lacey and me stayed charged, but careful. Like we were walking a tightrope in the dark, hands outstretched, feeling for something real without knowing if it was there. She was still holding my hand, lightly. Just enough to be felt, not enough to be claimed. I don't want to be a mistake, she said, almost too quietly to hear. You're not, I replied without thinking. Not yet. I looked at her, really looked. The kind of look that maps a face for later. Memory work. She was beautiful in a raw, unscripted way. No makeup left. Hair undone. Eyes tired but alive. She looked like someone who was done pretending. We sat there in silence. The kind of silence that only exists when two people know exactly what they want, but are too scared to reach for it. I don't want to hurt her, she said eventually. She's not worried about hurting me, I said. That landed. She nodded slowly, pulling her hand away, not rejecting me, just shifting, grounding herself again. I used to admire her, Lacey said. The way she walked into a room like she owned it. The way people orbited her. She likes being wanted, I said. So do you. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. She stood up suddenly, walking toward the window. I thought she was leaving. I half stood, unsure of what I was supposed to do. But she just stood there, arms folded, looking out into the dark, like the answers were somewhere on the lawn. She was my best friend, she said. She still is. Lacey shook her head. I don't know anymore. She turned back around, eyes glassy but dry. I didn't come here to start anything, she said. But I'm tired of pretending we don't see each other. There it was. Honesty. Not the kind that gets you applause. The kind that changes things. I crossed the room slowly. Deliberately. Each step louder than it needed to be. I stopped in front of her, close enough to feel her breath. Her eyes met mine and held there. We didn't kiss. Not yet. Instead, I reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Her skin was warm. Soft. She tilted into the touch just slightly. Barely a lean, but enough to say everything that words wouldn't. I've thought about this, I said. I know. I told myself I wouldn't act on it. I told myself that too. We stood like that, the hum of possibility between us louder than anything else in the house. My hands hovered at her waist. Hers curled near her chest, fingers twitching like she didn't know whether to reach for me or keep her promise to someone who wasn't here. What happens if we don't stop? I asked. She smiled, just barely. Then we stopped lying. We moved closer, an inch at a time. Still not touching. Still within the rules if someone wanted to be technical. But the moment was charged with intent, the kind that rewrites definitions. She leaned her forehead against mine. I'm not doing this out of revenge, she whispered. I'm not either. I don't want it to be messy. Too late for that. We laughed softly, the kind of laugh that breaks tension instead of adding to it. And then, finally, her hand found my chest. Not aggressively. Not possessively. Just there. Solid. Real. I placed my hand over hers. Neither of us moved beyond that. Not yet. Because this wasn't about sex. Not really. It was about choosing. It was about someone finally saying, I see you. The moment stretched long and slow, like the world outside the window had stopped moving entirely. I could hear the hum of the fridge, the occasional car passing on the street. But here, in this house that had felt so empty just hours ago, something was beginning. Not a fire, a slow burn. Lacey leaned back first, just enough to meet my eyes again. "I'm not staying because I'm drunk," she said. "I know. I'm staying because I want to." That was the moment. The quiet crossing of a line we'd pretended didn't exist. I nodded. "Then stay." She exhaled, a sound like release, like she'd been holding in that breath for months. We moved back to the couch, not touching this time, just sitting side by side in a silence that no longer felt empty. The kind of silence that comes after something truthful. She took the blanket from the back of the couch and pulled it over her legs. Then she leaned slightly against me. No kiss, no undressing, no sex. Not tonight, just presence. She stayed the night. Not in the guest room, not in my bed, either. Just with me. And it was enough. The morning light was brutal. Not loud or dramatic. Just honest. It filtered through the living room curtains in long, indifferent stripes, cutting across the floor like it was drawing a line between last night and now. I opened my eyes to the hush of early sun and the steady rhythm of Lacey's breathing beside me. She was still curled up under the throw blanket, one leg out, one arm draped loosely over the edge of the couch. Her hair was a mess of waves and tangles. Her lips slightly parted in sleep. For a moment, before memory set in, it looked normal, comfortable, like something we'd done 100 times before. But we hadn't. Not like this. I sat up slowly, careful not to shift the cushions too much, and rubbed the back of my neck. The air smelled like fabric, whiskey, and something softer, Lacey's shampoo, maybe. I didn't move to wake her. I didn't want the moment to start unraveling yet. My phone was on the coffee table. I reached for it and checked the time, 6:47 a.m. No text from my wife. Nothing from Lacey, obviously. But the quiet buzz of guilt was already forming behind my ribs. Not the dramatic, stomach-churning guilt of betrayal, but something subtler, something duller, like standing in the shadow of a choice you can't take back, even if you haven't technically crossed the final line. I stood and padded to the kitchen barefoot, the hardwood cold against my feet. I needed coffee. Something simple. Something routine. I wanted the hiss of the machine, the comfort of a morning ritual that didn't lie to me. As it brewed, I leaned on the counter and stared at the sink. The same dirty spoon from last night's overcooked pasta still sat there, lonely and crusted. Everything was still exactly where I left it. Except me. Lacey stirred behind me. I could hear the soft shuffle of the blanket, the stretch of limbs, the low groan of someone reluctantly waking up in a place they're not sure they should be. She appeared in the doorway a few seconds later, still wrapped in the blanket, her eyes squinting against the light. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep." She nodded and stepped closer, barefoot too, hair wild. She looked softer now, less composed, beautiful in the way real people are, unguarded, unarmored. "Coffee?" I asked. "God, yes." I poured 2 mugs and handed her one. Our fingers touched again, like they always seemed to now, and we didn't flinch, but we didn't hold either. We drank in silence. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't easy either. Finally, she exhaled. So, here it was. The moment after. I nodded toward the couch. "Sleep okay?" She smiled slightly. "Better than I expected." "Me too." She leaned against the counter, arms wrapped around the mug, blanket draped over one shoulder. She looked like a woman who hadn't yet decided what to feel. "I meant what I said last night," she said. "That you weren't staying because you were drunk?" She nodded. "I wasn't. I'm not confused about that." "Me neither." We sipped again. More silence. "I should probably go before she comes home," Lacey said. I looked up sharply. "She's not staying out." Lacey gave me a look. "She never does. She'll come home early. Pretend like she's doing you a favor by making breakfast or something. Act like nothing happened." I stared into my coffee. "You've seen this play before. Too many times." I hated how easily she said it. How right she was. How much it stung to realize I'd become a background character in my own marriage. She moved toward the hall and disappeared briefly into the bathroom. I heard water running, the soft brush of her teeth against a finger. When she returned, she looked a little more like the Lacey the world saw, but still not entirely. She stopped in front of me again, eyes searching. "This changes things," she said. "Yeah," I replied, "even if she never knows." The weight of that hit us both. She stepped closer, stood on her toes, and pressed a kiss to my cheek. Soft. Not romantic. Not platonic. Something in between. Then she turned, picked up her keys from the table, and walked to the front door. She paused with her hand on the knob, looked back once, but didn't speak, and left. The click of the door closing felt louder than it should have. I was alone again. Only this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt full of consequences. I sat down at the kitchen table and stared into the coffee. It had gone cold. I didn't check my phone again for a while. I didn't want to know what I'd find. I took a long shower, trying to wash the night off my skin, but it clung. Not like shame. Not even like regret. Just permanence. I changed clothes, cleaned the kitchen, paced the house. When the lock turned in the front door, my body reacted before my mind did. Shoulders straightened. Heart skipped. Guilt sparked like static in my chest, but it faded the moment I saw her. My wife. Smiling. Casual. Like the night hadn't happened. "Hey, babe," she said brightly, slipping off her shoes. I was going to bring breakfast, but the line at the cafe was insane. I just stood there, leaning against the doorframe. She looked up, noticed my silence. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, just didn't sleep much." She walked past me, dropped her purse on the table like always, and headed straight to the fridge. She moved like she always did, comfortable, unbothered, rehearsed. Like everything was fine. And maybe it was. To her. But I couldn't unsee last night. Couldn't unfeel it. And now, even as she stood 10 feet away, the distance between us had never felt wider. She kissed me like nothing had changed. That morning, after she walked in, smiling, breezy, like she hadn't been wrapped around some stranger in a bar hours before, she came over, cupped my face, and kissed me on the mouth. Soft, brief, casual. The kind of kiss meant to say everything's normal. But it wasn't. I felt the distance in her lips. The lack of pause. The absence of hunger. And she didn't notice mine. We moved around each other for the rest of the morning like magnets forced into polite proximity. She asked about my night without really listening. Made herself coffee. Sat cross-legged on the couch scrolling through her phone. Every now and then, she'd show me something funny or outrageous. Some meme, a news headline, a text from one of her girlfriends. I nodded at all the right times. Smiled when required. But my mind was still back in the soft tension of last night. And it showed. Around noon, she tilted her head at me. "You're quiet." I shrugged. "Didn't sleep well." "Still not used to sleeping alone?" she said, teasing. I didn't answer. She misread that silence as embarrassment and smirked. "You'll adapt," she said. Something in me itched. Not anger. Not jealousy. Something colder. Clarity. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought her freedom was untouched and that mine was hypothetical, an idea that would stay neat and safe in the box we'd agreed to. She thought she could walk out, fuck who she wanted, and come back to a man too loyal or too afraid to do the same. She hadn't accounted for Lacey, and I hadn't told her. Not because I was hiding it, but because, somehow, it didn't belong to her. Later that day, she was texting while we were on opposite ends of the living room. Her phone lit up, and I caught a name flash across the screen I didn't recognize. Male. I didn't care to ask, but I did notice that she glanced at me right after she saw the text. Quick. Guilty. Just enough. Her power, her easy confidence, suddenly looked thinner. Paper thin, even. She was watching me now, trying to read something. And I let her. That night, things got weirder. We were in bed, backs turned, when she reached across and ran her hand along my shoulder. "I missed you," she whispered. It was a test. I felt it in my bones. I didn't roll over. I didn't say I missed you too. I just said, MHM. She withdrew. Not all the way, but enough to let the silence fall again. And in that silence, I realized something had shifted. Not because of sex. Because of attention. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure where mine was going. The next day, Lacey texted me. Still breathing. I smiled at the screen before I could help it. Barely. She sent a photo of her coffee mug with a tired caption. Monday. Kill me. It was mundane, safe, perfect. But we both knew the real message wasn't in the words. It was in the frequency. We talked again that night. Just texts. Casual. Jokes. Comments about movies we both hated. The kind of banter that had once existed with my wife. The kind that had faded over time and now lived in new spaces. Spaces I hadn't expected. A few days passed. Nothing dramatic. But then came Thursday. Girls' night. Again. She told me as she got dressed, applying eyeliner in the mirror like she was painting on a new face. Just me and Lacey again, she said. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching. She said she wasn't feeling the bar scene last time. My wife shrugged. She got weird that night. I think she's stressed or something. Or something. She say where you're going? I asked. She hesitated. Not really. She said she'd figure it out when we met up. My smile was slow. Small. But it landed. She paused, lipstick in hand. What? She asked. Nothing. You're being smug. Am I? She squinted. You know something I don't. I shrugged. Don't we all? She frowned, but didn't press. And that's when I saw it. Slight, but visible. Uncertainty. It slid beneath her skin like a drop of ink in water. She adjusted her earrings, but didn't meet my eyes. For once, she was the one second-guessing. At the door, as she slipped on her heels, she kissed me again. A little longer this time. A little more deliberate. Trying to reclaim something. I let her. But as she walked out, I didn't watch from the window. I just waited. And then, my phone buzzed. Lacey. She's trying too hard tonight. I noticed, I replied. She followed up. I told her I was tired. I'm not going out. So you're home? Yeah. Alone. You? Same. Dot. 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 Then, not sure how long we'll both be alone. That was when I realized the shift was permanent. My wife thought she'd opened the door and still held the key. But she hadn't noticed it was already off the hinges. It started with a question. Not a scream. Not a tearful breakdown. Just a single question. Quiet. Calculated. Did something happen between you and Lacey? She asked it while folding laundry. I was on the couch, flipping channels, but not watching anything. Her voice didn't rise. Her hands didn't shake. She was folding a t-shirt when she said it, like it was any other comment. I paused, thumb hovering over the remote. There was no point pretending I didn't hear her. So I looked up and met her eyes. Something flickered there, an unease she hadn't shown me in weeks. Maybe months. What makes you ask that? I said. She let out a breath through her nose, half a laugh, half frustration. She's been distant. Weird. She bailed on me twice this week. Didn't answer my texts last night. Something's off. She could just be tired. I offered. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Is she? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That silence, that 2 seconds of hesitation, was enough. Her shoulders straightened. Not rage. Not yet. But the tremor of it. You didn't sleep with her, right? She asked, the words sharp now. No. But something happened. I set the remote down. She sat on the edge of the coffee table across from me, laundry forgotten. Just tell me. I exhaled, long and slow. We talked. Spent time together. That's not what I meant. I know. Her jaw clenched. So what was it? Did you kiss her? Touch her? What? I didn't look away. Because lies wouldn't help anymore. No, I said. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch like that. But we crossed a line. She blinked. You emotionally cheated? I laughed once, bitter. Is that what we're calling it? In our open marriage? She recoiled at that. That's different, she said. We had rules. Rules you made, I said. And bent whenever it suited you. Her mouth opened, but no words came. I pressed forward. You told me I was free. You said we both were. But I was never really free, was I? I was supposed to stay loyal, faithful, passive, while you went and chased whatever thrill you thought you deserved. I never lied to you, she shot back. You didn't have to, I said. You just kept changing the terms. She stood now, arms folded tight across her chest. So what? You're in love with her. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Not yet. But the fact that I couldn't say no out loud changed everything. She laughed, a sharp, bitter thing. This is fucking rich. Don't pretend you didn't see this coming, I said. She shook her head. I trusted her. She trusted you. Those words hit like a slap. I saw her face change, like I'd opened a window to something she'd been ignoring. A part of herself she didn't want to look at. You wanted freedom, I said. And you used that word like a shield. But you never thought it would cost you anything. You think I'm the villain here? She asked, voice rising. I think you're human, I said. But I also think you underestimated me. She sat back down, slower now. Quieter. What happened? She asked again. Really? I rubbed my palms together, searching for words. She came over one night. You were out. We talked. She stayed late. That's not new. No, I said. But the way we talked was. She swallowed. Nothing physical? Not then. Her eyes snapped up. So it happened after? Not sex, I said. But something. She flinched. Like that was worse somehow. She looked down at her lap, silent for a long time. Then, was it better? I hesitated. It was different. That's a yes. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I sighed. It wasn't about better. It was about being seen. About not feeling alone. She looked up. Her eyes were wet, but no tears fell. I never meant to lose you, she whispered. I don't think you realized you already had. And just like that, the room changed. No shouting. No accusations. Just absence. The collapse of something long crumbling. She nodded slowly, like she was finally seeing the shape of it. So now what? I don't know, I admitted. But pretending this is still working doesn't feel like an option anymore. She wiped at her eyes. And her. She's not asking for anything. But if she did? I looked at her. Long quiet. Honest. I'd listen. The words hung there like confession. She stood again, walked toward the hallway, then stopped. I thought if I gave you freedom, you'd stay. I thought if I accepted it, I'd still matter. She turned back. Her eyes softened for the briefest second, then hardened again. You made your choice, she said. No, I said. You made yours. I just finally responded. She left the room. Not with a slam. Just a quiet retreat. I sat alone again, the couch empty on both sides. But I didn't feel alone. I felt real. And in some strange, terrible way, I felt free. The silence after the confrontation was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. She didn't storm out. No bags, no ultimatums. Just distance. She drifted through the house like a ghost, avoiding rooms I was in, speaking only when necessary, offering the politeness of a stranger in a shared space. It lasted 4 days. 4 days of brushing past each other, of cold dinners eaten on opposite ends of the room, of doors closed with just enough force to send a message. On the 5th day, she was gone. I came home from work and the house was quieter than usual. Not in the way that silence hangs when someone is asleep, but the way it settles when absence becomes official. Half her closet was empty. The bathroom counter, once cluttered with her products, was wiped clean except for a single hair tie and an old bottle of moisturizer. No note. No text. Just a message later that night. I'm staying at my sister's. I'll send someone to get the rest. And that was it. I stared at the message for a long time, waiting for some emotion to rise. Relief. Sadness. Anger. But what came was something simpler. Heavier. Finality. I sat on the edge of the bed that night, in the space she used to call hers. The sheets still smelled like her perfume, but faintly now, like a scent left behind in a dream. I closed my eyes and breathed it in, knowing it would be gone soon too. And that was okay. I didn't reach out to Lacey that night. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew this wasn't the moment for beginnings. It was the moment for endings. The following week was a slow unraveling. Friends started to notice. Questions came in. You two okay? Haven't seen her lately. Everything good? I kept my answers short. She's staying with family. We're figuring things out. Nobody asked more. Some of them probably knew. We had projected a certain kind of marriage for years. Progressive, adventurous, boundary pushing. But behind closed doors, it was brittle. Built more on appearances than substance. Love had turned to performance long before we named it Open. On a Thursday afternoon, I got a text from Lacey. Hey, just checking in. Is now a bad time? I stared at the message for a while, then typed back. No, now's good. She arrived half an hour later. No makeup, jeans and a hoodie. Hair pulled back. The version of her I liked best. The one that didn't try to be anyone but herself. She stood in the doorway awkwardly, holding a 6-pack of beer and a plastic bag with takeout. I didn't know if this was a celebration or a funeral, she said. Maybe both. We sat at the table, ate in silence at first, then laughed about something stupid, her fortune cookie being blank. I guess the universe gave up on me, she said, smirking. I think it just ran out of ways to surprise you. She looked at me, more serious now. How are you really? I hesitated. Tired. Lighter. A little scared. Scared? Of what comes next? She nodded. We didn't touch. Didn't flirt. There was no seduction here. Just two people sitting in the honest wreckage of something they hadn't planned to destroy, but couldn't keep propping up. She texted me, Lacey said after a while. Asked if I'd slept with you. I looked up. And I told her no. Thank you. I told her I didn't have to. I tilted my head. What does that mean? She shrugged. looking down at her food. It means she thought I wanted you just for that. To spite her. To take something. But I didn't. I wanted you because I saw you. I felt my chest tighten. Are you still angry at her? I asked. She considered it. No. Just done. We sat there for a while, letting that be the truth. Then she stood. I should go. Do you want to? She looked at me. Long measured. I want to come back. But not because you need a replacement. Not because we feel guilty. I want to come back when we're ready to start something real. Not salvage what's left. I nodded. Then come back when that time comes. She smiled. Not sad. Not forced. Just real. And she left. This time, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt full of possibilities. Weeks passed. The divorce papers came. Simple. Clean. No drawn-out battles. No accusations. We'd both known it was coming. Now it just had a signature to prove it. She didn't say goodbye when she picked up the rest of her stuff. Just sent someone else. That felt fitting. Because she'd already left long before her clothes did. Lacey came back one Saturday. No announcement. No message. She just knocked on the door and smiled when I opened it. You're here, I said. I'm here. And that was it. No grand declaration. No fireworks. Just someone choosing me. Not because I begged. Not because she pitied me. But because she saw me. And I saw her. And that, somehow, was enough.